Quinn Wisson from Vertical Measures, and I'm here hosting VM's monthly webinar series. Today's webinar is titled Measure, Analyze, and Act, Develop a Data-Driven Content Marketing Strategy, and will be presented by our very own KAILA Strong. KAILA is the Director of Client Strategy and works to evaluate and analyze clients' overall internet marketing needs and develop strategies and recommendations for a successful campaign. KAILA also oversees the account management team at Vertical Measures and trains new account managers. Before we get started and I hand over the presentation, I just have a couple things to note. Today's webinar will be recorded and will be available tomorrow, barring any technical problems. We'll be sending you all an email, and there will be a link in that email to the recording and also the slides, so you can download them there. We'll also be happy to answer any of your questions. So if you take a look at your webinar interface, there's a little question applet, and that's where you can send me anything, and I will ask KAILA at the end of her presentation. And you can also tweet us using the hashtag VMWebinar. We'll get the questions there. If we don't get any questions or we can't get to them, we'll be sure to try and answer via email afterwards. If you're having any technical difficulties, please just attempt to disconnect and then reconnect. So with my notes complete, I will hand it off to our presenter, KAILA Strong.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Quinn. As she stated, we're going to be talking about data-driven content marketing today. So let's go ahead and get started right away. So just to start off a little bit about me. As Quinn said, I'm the Director of Client Strategy. I've been here since 2008, originally from Montana, and I am completely obsessed with data. So hopefully some of my vigor for data will translate in this presentation. So what is data-driven content marketing? I'm sure most of you wouldn't have signed up for this webinar unless you kind of had a feeling of what this is. But data-driven content marketing is the utilization of data, statistics, market research, surveys, public data to dictate your content strategy. So before developing any type of content, you're utilizing some sort of data in order to help that develop your strategy. And I think it's definitely one of those areas where a lot of people sort of neglect. They just want to start putting out content on their blog. They heard, putting out 4 posts a day and having 15 pieces a month is going to be really successful. But really being able to look at data statistics, the market research, knowing what types of content your audience is looking for is going to be best when you're trying to develop a strategy. So we're going to talk about some of the metrics. Here's a long list of some of the metrics. This by no means is a complete list. There certainly are other metrics that are going to be important to you, but we'll dive in deeply into a few of these, or actually all of these. And then, if you have any questions, definitely put that in the chat applet, and we can kind of discuss some of the data metrics that you're looking for if you have questions on items I don't cover. So important to measure: demographics, traffic, social metrics, links, email metrics, search and social keyword data, conversions, of course, to prove the return on the investment, engagement, and third-party data. All of these are certainly important to measure. All right, so the first one that we're going to look at is demographic data. So in essence, it's providing important insights about trends and opportunities that may exist in a given market. You certainly using the information to develop content catered to your audience is going to be important if you start looking at demographic data. So one of the key areas with demographic data is to determine what your market segments are. Who is it that are your prospective customers? Have you done any research in the past to really identify who your customers are, who your ideal customers are, who your customers are right now? Looking at that data can be very helpful. You probably even may already have it, but it might be in a different department or might be a little bit higher up, and others might not have thought that it would be applicable for your content efforts. So certainly get access to that data. And use social information if you have it, or survey. So sending out a poll or a survey is very important. Understand the types of information that you're looking for before you put together that survey. There are a lot of articles and great information and research available to help you put together the right survey to get the data that you're looking for. In social information you can gather from maybe a Facebook page, some of your other social profiles as well. Understanding your audience's age, maybe looking at their income, their education level, and of course their location. So age is going to help you to understand, what type of demographic you're looking at. What's their communication style? How do they best interact with content? From baby boomers all the way down to millennials, you're going to want to look into that information. If you're seeing that most of your conversions are happening from a specific age group, or that your overall audience is segmented into one of these particular areas with age, then start to do your research from there and drill down and understand what type of content they're looking for, what language they're using. All those things can help you with developing the right type of content. With income, if you're looking at middle income folks, or if you're looking at a luxury buyer, those are two completely separate demographics that would be important to understand how best to communicate with them through your content. Education level, we work with some higher education online schools, and though that audience is varied across the board. Some of our clients have bachelor's degree programs, so those students are a little bit different than if it was a graduate level program. A master's degree is much different than a bachelor's degree, and that audience is going to be different. So you need to speak to the education level of those users, those prospects. And then, of course, location. So you don't want to be talking about things that are happening on the East Coast or about hurricanes and about tornadoes when, like us, we live in Arizona and those things don't affect us. So thinking about your location and how it impacts your content and the type of content, the topics that you're looking at is very important. All right, so traffic data. Of course, this is an obvious. Review your most viewed pages to discover the popular content on your site and use that data to develop new content. One of the areas where I see some people kind of struggling is that they're looking at month-over-month information, but they're not looking at yearly data or looking beyond that. So I think it's really important to examine monthly, quarterly, yearly, and then also beyond to try to see, there might be some cyclicality and trends in your traffic. And if you're not looking at the proper data set, the proper dates, then you're not going to show some of that traffic data. So make sure that you're looking at monthly, quarterly, yearly, and beyond, looking for that cyclicality in the data, looking what drives the most unique traffic, where is that traffic coming from. So I'm kind of bouncing around here a little bit, but look at referral sources when analyzing that last bullet point there on the slide. Referral sources are certainly important when you're looking at traffic. That can help you to determine, not only what sites are driving the most qualified traffic to your site, but in addition, helps you, promote your content better for more effectiveness. And then one of the other items is examining time of day and time on page. So you may be publishing some of your content really early in the morning, but most of your traffic, finds you later on in the day, or maybe Tuesdays work better than Thursdays. If you're not looking at that data, you're not going to know when to publish the content. So start testing around and looking at that data, looking at it monthly, quarterly, yearly, and then beyond. And the time of day and time on page day is also important. Time on page, of course, is going to be able to show you, how engaged someone is maybe on that particular page. How much are they actually digesting the content? Is the content too long? Is it just perfect? Do you maybe need to use headlines, bullet points instead of just basic text? Maybe some video and images to break it up a bit as well. Those are all things that you can likely discern if you look at some of this data. And then don't forget about your evergreen content. So there could be pages on your site that are receiving tons and tons of traffic. We have some posts on the VM blog that receive 1,000 visits a month, and they're from 5 years ago, 4 years ago. If I was just looking at, maybe the traffic from the month compared to the previous month, that might be number 50 on our, most trafficked pages. But if I'm looking at since 2008, that information is going to show up right away, and I'm going to be able to see that evergreen content that's performing really well. So make sure that you're using the right data sets in order to discern some of this information and drive some of your thoughts behind, the data and what type of content you should be developing. So just from our own personal experience with the Vertical Measures blog, we discovered that a lot of our old videos, these SEO tutorial videos that we do, rank really well and they get a lot of traffic. So by looking at that, now we're starting to develop content that focuses on some of those how-to phrases, some of that content that has worked previously is helping to dictate our future content. So be sure to look at that. All right, so one of the other metrics to definitely look at is social metrics. Insight into the most socially active content can be a key data set to examine. So you want to look for content that your social audience appreciates and feels compelled to share, like, tweet, and comment on. If someone is going to read your content and then share it with their friends, obviously they found that of interest, and so it's going to be really important to look at that information. Determine what the most social type of content is. Are your videos performing better than maybe your infographics, or are your blog posts performing well? Look at the type of content, are the how-to posts doing really well, or is it answering a question that's doing really well, or is it within a topic vertical? So with the Vertical Measures blog, I'll keep using that as an example since it's fresh. We have found that most of the content that gets picked up pretty well on our blog is, not necessarily what you would maybe think. And some of the posts that get picked up and talked about the most are the most unique ones. So link building is a very niche topic in our industry, and it seems like just on a normal basis when we pepper in some of that content, it gets picked up and syndicated on more sites than maybe some of the content marketing types of posts that we have. So looking at that data, you can start to analyze and be able to drive your content marketing strategy around that. But certainly looking at the social metrics is important. Understanding who engages with your content. So not just looking at, oh, we got 15 shares on Facebook, so we should use Facebook more, or this type of post should be promoted more on Facebook, or we should write more of this content. Actually see who is sharing your content. On Twitter, look at the retweets and see who it is. Who are those users who are retweeting your content on a regular basis? Once you understand who's engaging with the content, you're taking it a step further than just finding the most social type of content. You're seeing that engagement and who those individuals are. Examine your most popular content each month and quarter and year. I definitely think this is really important. You're setting baseline metrics. You're understanding not just what is beneficial right now, but you could be getting retweets. You could be getting likes and shares on content that you haven't even done anything with for years. So make sure that you're aware of that and looking at data monthly, quarterly, and yearly. And then develop content catered to a popular platform. So like I kind of said before, if you're finding that a particular topic really resonates on a given platform, then you might want to start developing that type of content a bit more. On the Vertical Measures blog, we do some social graphics, and social graphics, small digestible social graphics that aren't as long as an infographic. They fit within an image on Facebook, seem to do fairly well. When we promote those posts on Facebook, they get a lot of shares, and they really resonate with our social audience. So we wouldn't have been able to know that necessarily unless we tried it out. We looked at the data, and then we understood that that particular type of content catered to Facebook. So look to see if you have any data that's going to be able to share that information with you by looking at Facebook Insights, by looking at Google Analytics just to see what's referring the most traffic. You looking at your social buttons as well on your actual content pages is going to help you find some of that information too. Okay, so one of the other items that we often look at is link data. So discover your top pages in Open Site Explorer, and those are the pages that are linked to the most. So look to develop content that earns links. I hate using the term link bait because it's so overused, but in Open Site Explorer, which is the image that I show here on the screen, you put in your domain, you look at top pages, and it's going to show you the content that has been the best for link bait, the content that has been linked to the most. Now, of course, if you've been doing some link building in the past, and if you've been, properly interlinking and things of that nature, some of your top pages might be your services pages, but look for some of the blog posts that have the most links built to them. And then what I also do is I look at competitors and see what their most linked to content is. some of the best ideas that we've pitched to clients to develop content for are all because their competitor was doing it, but maybe they weren't doing it as well, or it was a strategy that worked for them, so then we wanted to find some sort of a like idea in order to develop that really great content that's going to be linked to. So that's certainly important. Also examine your anchor text and the authority of the links. So the anchor text, if it's manufactured links, if it's links you've actually placed, then obviously the anchor text is likely to be some of your money phrases. But look for some of those that natural anchor text and understand the authority of the links that have been driven, especially when you're looking at your competitors. That's going to help you to determine the best type of content that your competitors are using that's really helping them with earning links, and then also understanding if it's truly manufactured or it's a natural link. The anchor text is going to help you show that. Looking at relevancy of your backlinks to specific content pages is, of course, very important. If you're finding that one particular content piece gets syndicated on a lot of really niche websites that are very closely related to your industry, then look to try to develop that type of content in the future. If maybe it's getting syndicated on some not-so-great industry types of blogs that aren't as relevant, you might want to shy away from that a little bit. But certainly looking at the link data is really important to kind of discern that. And then become a resource worth linking to. This is easier said than done, of course, but if you start thinking about becoming a resource or who resources are within your industry, using Open Site Explorer, looking at the top pages and seeing what people are actually linking to are going to help you to kind of understand what sort of resource they are and why people are linking to them on a regular basis as a resource. And so I really like the top pages part of Open Site Explorer. Other tools have something similar, so whatever your tool you're using, you probably have access to something like this. Just use it for content marketing. All right, one of the other metrics is the email metrics. Examine your open rates, your click-through rates, and data from email campaigns, newsletters. All of those things are always going to be great for discerning some information about what's going to be good for your content strategy. One of the first things is discovering the effectiveness of a subject line or a title. So if you're continually sending out emails and you're varying up the subject line and the title, how does that play with your click-through rates and your open rates? And then is that something that you can translate and test out with your content marketing efforts? It could be that how-tos or using stop words or things like that are really effective in your subject lines. You may want to test it out a little bit with some of your content and see if that helps as well. You can try to find patterns in high-performing email campaigns, looking for the type of content, the way that you're wording the email campaigns. Look for some of that information in order to help you drive your content marketing efforts. One key tip is to scrub your email list if you receive a lot of non-deliverables. Obviously, this would kind of muck up your data and show a lot of non-open rates when it's just non-deliverables. So take those emails out or scrub them a little, scrub the email list a bit, so then you're not kind of compromising your data. And then, make sure that once you take that data out of there, that you're using it effectively to really try to find a percentage of open rates, click-through rates. One of the other things that I don't mention here is click-through rates on actual URLs contained within the email. So if you're using tracking code, event tracking code of some sort, try to see what your click-through rates are. Comparing it to open rates and then actually who clicks through. Are there particular articles, content, things in your newsletter, things in your email that are really driving the click-throughs? That can help give you a little bit of an indication of what might be great as far as content on your site goes. All right, the next one is search and keyword data. So examining data from search engine traffic, internal search as well, and then keywords that are driven to your site to understand the types of content being searched for. So one of the areas that, I think a lot of sites now do have site search, but there are some languishing sites out there who don't have site search. But there's a lot of information that you can gain from just looking at how your users are searching just within your own site. They're already on your site, but they're not finding what they're looking for, or they just want to find it faster, so they're using site search. Well, what kind of keywords are they using in order to find what they're looking for? They might be looking for some services pages and things like that, but if you have an extensive amount of content on your site, then they might be using the site search just to find an updated article or some more information that might be contained elsewhere. Use some of that information and try to develop content to help them answer the questions, or if maybe they're searching for things that you just don't have on your site, it could be an opportunity to develop content. So use that data for that. Look at keywords sending traffic to existing content. I just did a large site audit with vertical measures and found some really great short-tailed terms that were driving traffic to the site, that we might not have even really known about because we're not rank checking them. But without looking at that information, then I wouldn't have known that, maybe we need to produce some more, articles on SEO with HTML5, which seems to perform pretty well. So that information is really important to look at. Uncover opportunities for additional content. So looking at your site search, and if they're searching for keywords that aren't contained on your site, maybe look to develop content for that. If you're finding a keyword phrase that's driving a lot of traffic, but again, maybe from search engines, but it's not, you don't have any content on your site about that, see about developing content for that. And then don't forget to look at both Google Analytics and Webmaster Tools. With the data that's not provided in Google Analytics, you can kind of back into it a little bit with Webmaster Tools, so that's really important to look at both of those areas to try to see what's getting the most impressions from a keyword basis, and then what's getting the most click-throughs, and then of course in Google Analytics seeing what's driving the most traffic with specific keyword queries. One of the last ones that we're going to look at is conversion data. So conversion data can help you figure out which content pieces aid in converting traffic into sales, of course. The highest converting type of content should be replicated to improve profits over time, of course. First, define what a conversion is to you, because for your blog it could be an email subscriber, that's a conversion, or request for more information could be a conversion, or it could be someone picking up the phone. You want to understand what that conversion looks like for you. And then setting up proper conversion tracking, testing it on a regular basis to ensure that all that tracking is working. And one thing is, it's more than just the number of leads. It's actually what closed as well. You want to kind of close that loop. It might not be, it's obviously not going to be contained in Google Analytics, but talk to your salespeople, look in your client relationship management system, try to close that gap, get access to the data of the leads that converted on your site, what actually closed. Because there could be a lot of information that you're not understanding. You might have a lot of leads coming in, but that close rate is 1%, from a particular referral source. But rather, maybe it's a smaller number of leads from another source, but they're much more highly qualified. So we see this a lot with like lead aggregators. Lead aggregators will, of course, send you a bunch of leads, or if you have a good referral source. But then when you're looking at how qualified those people are, often the close rate is a lot less. So if you're just looking at it from one perspective, you're not going to get the full picture. So look at what actually closed. Replicate content that has high ROI, obviously. This is, of course, very, very important. If you're finding that some types of content are converting higher than others, then look to really increase the amount of content that you're developing on that topic, within that niche, of that type. If we're looking at videos or infographics or just regular content, look to see what has the highest ROI and replicate that. Engagement is another data set, of course, to look at. So how is your audience actually interacting with your content, both on page and off page? So understand the different methods of engagement. It could be the social sharing, but it could be just clicking around your site. It could be staying on your site. It could be not bouncing off of your site. Look at the call to actions for engagement. So on a lot of the blog posts that we develop, we'll try to pose a question to the audience at the end of the blog post. Maybe play around with the different types of call to action, asking people to comment, asking people to share, asking people to register for your webinar, asking people to fill out your lead form. If you ask someone to do something at the end and have a proper call to action that makes sense, you could be using that very effectively, and that can help you dictate future content as well. If you find patterns in the types of call to action on this type of content works better than this type of content, We have to actually look for that data in order to make that determination. And then look at in-page click analytics. This is one thing that I really do like in Google Analytics, that you're able to look within a page and see where users are clicking around after they're done, reading what you have on your blog. Maybe you're finding that they're clicking on more information, or they're clicking on some more social buttons than others. Looking at a lot of that information is important. Comments are a good one to look at too with engagement. It could be considered social as well in the previous slide, but comments and which content really develops the most or attracts the most comments and feedback can be important to understanding the type of content that you should develop in the future. I believe this is one of the last points, is third-party data. So third-party discovery data, you can share, it's shared publicly in case studies or reports. It can certainly aid in understanding larger groups, because you might not be able to survey 100,000 people, but data.gov might have access to millions of people. Data.gov is definitely one that you can find. I mean, they're not going to be super segmented. It might be, if you're in a very difficult niche, it might not be appropriate to look at some of that information, but demographic data is certainly important, and so looking at some of that information you can find on data.gov. Marketing surveys that come out all the time. Forrester data has quantitative survey data that you can look at as well. And then one of the things that I would suggest is setting up a Google alert for industry data reports. So if you know of a search term that works really well to find some industry reports, put that in the Google Alerts and have it share with you anytime new reports come out in your industry. All right, so some of the best practices that we'll talk about, and we'll wrap up here. Test data to ensure it's accurate. This is always very important. Just like with the email list, if you're getting a lot of non-open, or if you're getting a lot of email denials, or that it didn't go through, that can really mess up your data. So make sure that your data is accurate by testing it. Build a data-driven organization. So it's more than likely that a lot of this data you're not going to be able to find just in one place or just with one person. It's going to go across different departments. So if you want to find the actual close rate of leads that have been submitted, you're going to have to go talk to your sales folks. If you're going to want to find some social information, you might need to go talk to your PR folks. So make sure that you're building a data-driven organization, asking them to send you regular reports on a regular basis. Try to make it monthly. Start to get them in that data-driven type of mindset, and that will certainly help. Don't make assumptions about your data. This is definitely one of those things that can get you to make an assumption and do something that isn't necessarily based on the data. So just always try to question and play devil's advocate with any of the information that you're looking at. Establish benchmarks so that you know some areas to compare to. Review regularly. I don't think data-driven content marketing and content strategy is a one-time thing. It could be a weekly, monthly, quarterly, very regularly review is required. Use tools like Excel or data visualization to help you understand and really look into the data a bit more. I was just reading a post on iAcquire's blog from, I think it was like April 13th is when it came out, but they gave a ton of great Excel tips on how to have a huge data set and be able to put it in pivot tables and be able to organize it effectively, find means and medians, and more, very in depth. So I definitely would suggest looking at that article. Drive some innovation with your data. So don't just make data observations, but start to really innovate your company and sharing that information across other departments, so that you can start to develop new products. You can start to develop new content and ideas based on the data that you're finding. A department that you might want to share information with, of course, would be sales. You might want to share some of the information you're finding with your PR department too, just to help with the promotion of some of your content. Don't just silo your data. If you are taking the time to produce content based on data, then make sure that you're sharing it with other departments. As always, focus on quality over quantity. I think, after all the Google updates and things like that, this is just hammered into us that it's all about quality. It's not necessarily about quantity. So focus on that. Segment and update your subscriber list, like I said before, so you're not, messing and mucking up your data. Segmenting your subscriber list is important, which we didn't really talk about before. In the higher education space, if you have just one email database and it's for all prospective students, but you're writing content about one specific degree program and sending it out to everybody, not everyone's going to be interested in that necessarily. So try segmenting your subscriber list so that you can send out specific catered emails to people, to your prospects who are really your prospects for that content piece, and then see how effective that is. If you're just trying to, to send it out, you're not going to be able to get the best data back and be able to drive some of your content marketing efforts because it's going to be mucked up. A lot of the people that looked at your content were interested, of course, so they wouldn't open it or they might not click on it. So then that data set is kind of not very accurate. And then set metric-driven goals. Try to set a goal for increasing, 5, 10% unique traffic, or trying to set some sort of goals that are based off of some of the data that you're looking at to drive your content marketing efforts. And then, this definitely, I like this graphic just because it's completely true. You want to measure your performance, you make your hypotheses, and you create the content. Jumping in here at any point and just starting to try is where data-driven content marketing really starts. And lastly, successful content strategies examine data-driven content marketing principles. I think, when you're looking at the data and you're thinking strategically, you can develop a great content strategy, but data-driven data is where it's definitely at in order for you to be most successful. All right, so that is pretty much it for the presentation, and we can take some questions now.
Great. Well, we have a question kind of going back to the beginning when you were talking about demographics. And the question is, do you not distinguish between demographic and psychographic? And psychographic meaning, values, personality, interests, attitudes, lifestyles, that type of thing.
I mean, definitely both of those are important. I think they're all inclusive a little bit. I kind of coded it under demographics to be more specific to age and income, but understanding how your online user is viewing content. So some of the Forrester social graphic social data is very important in developing a lot of your content.
Great. And I forgot to mention, if anyone still has questions, you can still send the little question through the applet on the interface, and we'll get to that. Second question is about data visualization. We have a question more about how can they make it into something creative and something, kind of interesting that's shareable. Are there any tools for that, or is it mostly using a designer?
I think using a designer allows for the customization a bit, but there are a lot of free data visualization tools. I think if you just do a Google search for data visualizations, you'll be able to come up with some. Even just using like Wordle is a good one if you want a cool graphic that kind of shows a bunch of different keyword phrases that are used a lot. That can be something that's kind of interest. But other data visualizers are going to be able to take the data that you're inputting and be able to organize it in a creative way, and it can definitely produce something. So one of the things that I didn't mention was, sometimes data-driven content marketing is described as using data, like actual, in this situation, using the data and creating a piece of content based on that data. Not creating, an inference based on data and then, developing your strategy, but rather just doing a polling of your users and having them answer a particular question and then developing that into an infographic or developing into a social graphic or a really great blog post. That's done a lot where research studies happen and then it turns into a great white paper. So any data visualizer could definitely work. I haven't used any specifically, so I can't give specific examples, but there are a lot out there, and I've seen the word ones done, I've seen the graphic ones done, I've seen there's a lot of different ways to be able to use data and visualize it in a shareable way.
Great. And I know we've had some good success with making even little data graphics or more heavy infographics, and they just kind of go bonkers on social media especially, so there's always good tools out there.
Yeah, I mean, even just taking one statistic, 79% of users are this way. That's one little statistic, but then you can create a cool graphic and, a pie chart, and then a couple different ways to, really dive into that in a graphic that's, fits on Facebook isn't an infographic. It's just something that maybe you create in a cheap Word editor or image editor. So.
Okay. Well, we have another question from Stephanie, and she asks, are there any tools you recommend for proving social media ROI or lead generation?
That's a good question. I think because there's so many different data sets, it's hard to find one tool that puts them all into one. And understanding what your true goal is and what is the return that you're seeing from that. So I've only done it manually because I haven't found a tool that really does what I want it to do. I'm looking at Google Analytics. I'm looking at the CRM system that we're using. I'm pulling manual things from Facebook Insights. I'm looking at a couple of different things. I'm looking at brand mentions. I'm looking at a lot of different areas in order to really find that information, and then trying to track down users. One of the things that's good, though, if you have e-commerce set up in Google Analytics, if you're an e-commerce site, you can look at social assists, and social assists in Google Analytics are good to look at. So you can see if a user maybe came to your site first from Facebook, left the site, but maybe converted a few visits later. That is a really good one to at least prove that there was some sort of assist from social media in a conversion. And some of that data is just not going to be available unless you look in that particular section of Google Analytics. Another thing to look is on the Google Analytics blog, Josh Bratton from Rasmussen College actually wrote a really great post about kind of setting up segmentation in your content to try to see, is a user going to this blog post first and then leaving and then coming back and finding this other piece of content and then coming back after that and then finally making a conversion. His blog post is really good. I would suggest anyone reading it so that what he's trying to do is understand, their college, and it's a very long process before someone makes a decision to become a student. And they go on and off the site very regularly. So he wants to see what type of content they're looking at all those stages of the cycle. And I think that's somewhere where with social media it gets a little hard to examine, and why no tool really can do this is because someone from social may be coming to your site regularly, but they don't convert until much later when they're actually doing a brand search for you, but they've been on your site several times. So I think it's really important to look at his article and be able to kind of set up segments. It does require very advanced knowledge of Google Analytics. I'll be honest with that, but it can certainly help.
Okay, cool. Well, we have one more question, at least time for it. And this kind of goes back to just Google Analytics in general and how to use this to see what content is performing for you. So it's from Gabriel, and he says, you suggest to replicate content that has ROI, but how could we actually know which content is achieving this? So maybe if you could walk us through just a basic process through Google Analytics and how this all works.
Sure. So on the Vertical Measures blog, one of our conversions is to actually request more information about our services. And so we have that goal set up in Google Analytics, and I can tell in Google Analytics when someone visits our blog post and then request more information after going to that post. I might have a call to action at the bottom with a link to our form page that says request more information now. That might be something that I can do to kind of enhance that. But it's something that you want to set up in Google Analytics. A conversion might actually be a sale of a product. And so if you have a shopping cart platform set up, then you're able to use, in more instances than not, you're able to use in Google Analytics the e-commerce tool. And that's going to be able to show you anytime someone converts into a sale, it's going to show you the path they took before they actually converted. And then you can start to look at that path and see if any content pieces actually attributed to that conversion. So maybe they saw, they came from social media, they saw a blog post, then you linked to a product in that blog post, and then they went and purchased that product. Or you were on, maybe Pinterest, and you were promoting some of your products on Pinterest, and they converted from Pinterest once they clicked on that link and went to the product page. So in Google Analytics, setting up e-commerce or setting up specific goal paths. And if you Google how to set up goals in Google Analytics, you'll be able to figure that out. It's a lot more than I can cover in the next couple minutes, unfortunately, because it can be a long process. But there are ways in Google Analytics to set up specific goals, which would be a conversion that you know is actually a conversion.
Well, maybe we can have another webinar on that specifically.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. So thanks, KAILA.
Thank you.
And thanks for everyone for joining us. I know I had a few questions about the links that KAILA mentioned throughout the webinar, so we'll make sure to package that and send it to you with the video. But also we have another webinar coming up in July 11th, and it will be our very own Mike Huber. He'll be presenting on Recovering from Penguin 2.0, a walkthrough. So he'll basically walk through the process of recovering from a Google Update penalty, which the Penguin 2.0 just came out, I think it was 2 weeks ago, so some people have been experiencing problems through that. So it should be a really good webinar. Registration is already open for that on our website. It's at verticalmeasures.com/webinars. So you can sign up there for free. And again, I'm Quinn from all of us at Vertical Measures. Thank you and have a great day. Bye.